Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier One. Well, as I sit down to put this show together, I got the word that the Queen had passed away. Now, I'm a little bit of two minds about this because while I am a staunch believer in other forms of government and independence and so forth, I'm also a traditionalist and really honestly an Anglophile. So I think it's justifiable, though, to be split between the respect that should be given for her and her position and her title and her life. But on the other hand, she's not exactly been a good queen. So I will say up front that the queen is dead. Long live the king. That's tradition. That's the only reason I say it, because the chump that's going to actually be king, well, I think he's far worse than she was, so they got that going for him, I guess. But I had planned to deal with Joe Biden, Joe Biden's rather communist-looking red rant speech that he gave last week, which happened after I had already put the show together and recorded it and whatnot, and was putting it up on the channel last week, so I didn't really get to comment on it. And I may touch on that a little bit maybe next week. But with the Queen passing, I think we can diverge from that topic and just step back and kind of take a little bit of a look at her reign and what it meant for the British Empire. So from the start, let's look at that phrase right there, the British Empire. At the beginning of her reign, England was still an actual place, and it still had an actual God's honest empire. As she passes into, whatever her destination in the hereafter is, England is no longer a place. It's a land where England used to be. The empire is gone, as every real former portion of it is independent and just loosely connected in the Commonwealth, at least outside of the actual British Isles. And I'm simplifying it there, a little bit, but that's really what it is. I find it kind of funny that, all the other pieces can go off and be on their own, but Scotland and Wales have to stick around like two abused wives who just can't seem to leave that deadbeat husband of theirs because they just love him. But at any rate, there's nothing left, and that's sad. It's sad on many levels. Now, one of the titles that the monarch wears is Defender of the Faith, which is to say that they are the de facto head of the Church of England. Well, the Church of England is so far in decline that the numbers are reaching levels that they've not seen since they first broke away from the Catholic Church. So at the beginning, which was just due to the sole, there wasn't that many people around at the time, and now their numbers are falling to lower levels than that. It is absolutely going away. And I mean, so far as we've heard of parish churches and places where the churches are being taken over by Muslim denominations, I guess you would call it, or Muslim practitioners, and being transformed into mosques. It's pretty sad. So she failed in that duty. She didn't just not defend the faith. She allowed the nation to be actively stripped of any religious conviction or representation at all. The only religion that is allowed in British society is foreign religions. Those are the only ones that garner any kind of respect for, from officialdom. They're given wide sway and deferences, but Christian observances are disavowed and disallowed and actively persecuted, actively suppressed. And it would have only taken a few words from the Queen to set that right. Had she made public speeches that condemned the loss of faith in her kingdom, her words would have carried weight, and she could have had an impact on society in that way. And she failed at that. She actively failed at that. She allowed that decline to happen. When we look at what England is today, it's a it's a shadow of its former self, and it's being, let's use the nice term, demographically shifted by completely unchecked immigration. Like much of Europe and the United States, the native people of England will, eventually be a minority in their own homeland. And she allowed that to happen. The British government has shifted the Overton window so far to the left that the so-called Conservative Party in the UK is really squarely in what the US would call the Democratic Party here. They are actually all left-wing, and no amount of right-wing philosophy is really, allowed to be publicly tolerated. It's viciously condemned. Espousing what would be considered moderate or slightly right of center positions in the US is almost a hate crime in the UK. Political thought is only allowed to be publicly spoken if it conforms with a carefully crafted and agreed upon channel of thought. And what passes for mainstream belief in the UK. And anything outside of that is just sometimes viciously attacked, like literally viciously attacked and shut down. It's a picture of what we are to become in the US if we allow ourselves to be drugged further down this path. Recently they arrested a man for what they call causing anxiety on social media because he was simply critical of some protected class on his Facebook page. The thought police are, alive and actively working in the UK, and she allowed that to happen. And we could go on with just example after example of how this queen allowed the decline and fall of the British Empire to occur. And I understand populist movements or independence movements that took place in these various countries and portions of the empire and why these things happened, but different arrangements could have been made. The Commonwealth could have included India, for example. It could have included the holdings in Africa or the Middle East, and imagine the number of problems that could have been avoided if the breakup of the old Turkish Empire and with the British possessions had been managed differently and done differently. The British went in and just drawed lines on a map, which led to all kinds of conflict throughout the middle of the century. Had the Queen stepped up and said, "No, don't, let's not do that. Let's do this a different way." I think things could have gone a lot differently, and some of that happened under her father, so you can't blame her completely for all of that. But still, you could say that the crown allowed those things to happen. But at any rate, we could go on and on, like I said, with this examples of this queen's failures. But I think you get the picture here, and I don't really have the energy to catalog that whole list, and nor do I think, most popular video platform that you are likely watching this on will allow me to go into much detail without striking my channel. If we really got into some of these things that are going on and the failures of the British government, and it gets really messy, right? So I you guys know what I'm speaking about, and that I'm correct in what I say. She allowed all of this to happen. The Queen may not have had direct political power in the UK, but she has influence, and she had the people, at least until things went south with Diana. And it took some time before some of the truth came out about that, and people kind of quietly raised their eyebrows and, acknowledged that, well, maybe Diana was not the saint that she was made out to be, and then the Queen might have done what was needed to be done, or at least that her attitude towards Diana was kind of justified. The people respected the Queen. I think they gained some respect back for her after that. But they would have given her words and her messages to Parliament and the Prime Minister, way more credence if she had really been more direct and more forceful and tried to actually steer her kingdom. conducted herself in a different manner, I think she could have stopped much of this, or at least slowed it down. That seems to be what we have to console ourselves with these days as to the role of the traditionalists, or the what has become called conservatives, is that all they do is they act as an anchor on the left and just drag slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. They can never stop it and move things back into what might be a more traditionalist position, but at least she could have been an anchor on it and slowed things down, and she didn't do that. She allowed all of this to happen. Well, but gee, you might say, look what she was dealing with in her own house. And yeah, let's look at that for a minute. We have her husband, her sons, and several other relatives who managed to get themselves involved in various and sundry sexual scandals along the years. Multiple scandals, and multiple times from some of these guys. Very high profile, international scandals. And that's all beyond the boring old, adultery of Charles and Diana. That was sort of the crack, I think. And things had happened a little bit before that, rumors and things going around. But that whole affair with Charles and Horseface and, the breakup of that marriage with Diana, that was just sort of the dam opening up. And then you start seeing more and more stuff come out. That entire family is a clown show of relationship failure and poor life judgments. It's just really embarrassing. And she allowed that to happen. She did not put a stop to any of that. So rest in peace, Your Grace. You go to your reward knowing that you may have in fact destroyed what remains of a kingdom that can trace itself back to the dream of one man from Mercia named Alfred, a man who wanted to unite all the kingdoms of Britain to create his dream of England, a united kingdom. And that was 1,100 years ago, and it took, a couple hundred years of fire and blood to make all that happen. The number of lives that were lost, the lands that were burned, it's staggering. And you burned it all down in a single lifetime. Now, I respect your title and your position, but I have very little respect for you, lady. Now, guys, that's all I got time for today. It's kind of been a long week for me. Sorry for the short show, but I'm a little under the weather with some stomach issues, and I just don't have much more to say here. So I hope you still enjoyed it. I promise to do better on the next episode. And with that, like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on that next episode.